Hello everybody, it's Vaultboyhunter here, Sam, and I'm doing my cube update for Battle for Zendikar. I just got my cards in. It takes about a week to get them in. You may notice that I'm recording on a horrible webcam. My computer is not new. Obviously it predates high def because this is as big as I can get the stupid window to go. And I could use Window Media, Window Movie Maker, or whatever, but it's incredibly complicated, and I just like active presenters. So the cube is in the background, so enjoy seeing these little things, just so you don't have to look at my desktop, but eyes here, eyes here. So I'm going to go through, I'll go through by color: white, blue, black, red, green, colorless. And I'll do the ins and the outs. To start out, I'll go over the tokens that are getting added. So first off, this is always a challenge because everything's backwards. Elemental tokens for the one elemental landfall guy. Very little landfall made it in, but these guys are really cool. 3/1 trample, and you exile them at the end of turn. So they're kind of like lightning or Hellspark elementals or spark elementals, and they only cost 3 mana off of landfall. So I like those dudes a whole bunch. Next up is some core ally tokens. The white retreat makes these guys. They're just 1/1 core allies. So got a whole bunch of those because I think the white retreat's one of the stronger retreats in the set. And then I have Eldrazi Scions, just a whole stack of them, because the Scion producers to me are some of the more interesting cards. So that's that one. That's the Winona Nelson art. Very Cthulhu-y. I really like the Scions in the set. I think they're quite cool. So I got a whole bunch of that particular one. And then I got, this is the Svetlin Ilivan art. This is my least favorite of the three because it's like just a little too literal, but it's still really awesome. So I got a bunch of those. A whole bunch of those. And then the last one is the Izzy art. Izzy art. So that one's pretty cool. Just a whole bunch of little Cthulhu monsters sacrificing themselves so you can pump out fatties. Just a good amount of Scion tokens. So that was it. The cube is still fully token supported except for Rakdos Guildmage. At some point I'll probably have to figure out how to proxy some of his token. Here, I'll bring it up real quick. I can't remember exactly what his token does. He's a good guild mage. It's just he's a guild mage from before Wizards started doing these. 2/1 green goblin creature with haste for 4 mana, and then remove it from the game, so you get rid of it at the end of turn. He's the only one that I don't have a token for out of this. So, and a lot of my token producers are gone, like all the heroic stuff. The only heroic card left is a Crowing Crusader, and he makes a token, but he's my last heroic card. And I talked a little on Twitter with some cube guys, and it just feels like too much of resource strain to support heroic in a cube. So I decided I'm not going to anymore outside of the one card. So we're going to go through. I'm going to do the I'll do the ins first, and then I'll do the outs. So first in is Royal's Retribution. I played this at both the pre-release and at a draft that I did, and I really like it. 5 mana is a lot, with 5 damage to any attacking or blocking creatures. I mean, it really hurts Weenie. It hurts 1/1s. It hurts big threats. I mean, 5 mana for basically, it's 5 damage for 5 mana, and you could split it up. However, you can get blowouts. So I really like that quite a bit. Next up is Expedition Envoy. There's not a strong ally theme, but I've been playing all of the 2/1s for 1 in white, and I think this is just another good example of that. Just a vanilla 2/1 for 1. Now, I didn't say, but this includes some cards from Origins and further back that I'm just supplementing other cards for. So War Oracle was a card that I had missed in my Origins update. So it's a 3/3 for 4 with Renown 1, and it has lifelink. And I just think that's just quite solid. You hit with it once, you gain 3 life, it becomes a 4/4. And for 4 mana, it's kind of what White wants to do. Core Castigator is next, 3/1. Can't be blocked by Scion, so you can't trade half of a card for it. I like the 3/1s for 2 in white right now, and so he's that with upside. So upside is always good. Next up is Void Snare, the Flash Journey to Nowhere. I like this card a whole bunch. I have not got to play with it in any of the limited that I've done so far because I think people are drafting it super high. I don't think that's wrong. I think that's actually where you want to draft it. It seems like it's a really strong card. Retreat to Myria is next. This is tied for what I think is the strongest retreat. I think this and blue are probably tied for first. I like the token producing. I like the all creatures get +1/+1. I wish there was more landfall enablers in my cube. I'm playing Terramorphic, Wilds, and the Panoramas. I wish Terramorphic Expanse, or I just wish they would do more of that type of fetch that is a slow fetch but is still like a utility fetch. Next up is United Front. 5-color is it's a deck archetype in my cube because it's so concentrated on gold. There's so many wedge cards, so many shard cards, and when I get to the lands, I've shown how I've weakened it a little bit, making it a little less easy to accomplish, but I still think this is pretty cool. I think it might actually be the only Converge card that I put in. I don't think they supported Converge very well in the set. I wouldn't be surprised if we see more of it in Oath. Like in Oath, all of a sudden it's the lead instead of Devoid or something like that. So, and then Sheer Drop removal with the upside of being one of the better Awaken cards. It's not one of the cheaper Awaken cards. It's 6 mana for a 3/3. But a 3/3 that kills something, you'll pretty much always want to do, especially in white. The one problem is it doesn't really hit utility creatures because they never have to attack or block, or they never have to... Actually, it does better than a lot of other white removal because it can hit like mana elves and stuff like that if they get tapped. So I was impressed with this in the draft and in the pre-release, so I think it's definitely worth playing. Removal is good. It's always going to be good. So the outs. This is the Ghostblade Eidolon. It's not good enough as a 1/1 with double strike for 3, and it's 7 or 6 mana to freaking bestow it, and I just don't think it's good enough. Bonds of Faith. This was always going to be on the chopping block as long as the next set brought something better to replace it with, as well as Call to Serve. I've really kind of lessened the ability to get 2 for 1 off of these enchantments. And with that, Heliod's Pilgrim is going out. There's just fewer auras left in the cube overall. So this card becomes a lot weaker. Auramancer's still in because there's still enchantments. There's just not that many auras. If this dude said, search your library for target enchantments, he would be really good. But because they limited it to auras, it's really limited. And that was pretty much the point. They didn't want people going hog wild. Next up is Blinding Beam. I like these entwined spells. This is the weaker of the two in white. It's not as impressive, and really it's not even a white ability anymore. It's something that blue does now, and I'm just not that impressed by it. So the better part, or creatures don't untap during their next untap step, feels not very white, and I don't think there's a white deck in here that really wants to do this. I did leave the other one in that gives +2/+2 and lifelink if you entwine it, because that's a finisher. That Blinding Beam is not a finisher really. Next up is Cloud Shift. This had got drafted and I don't think it ever got played. There's enough flicker effects to not need this, even in just white alone. When you add blue and bounce and the green bounce stuff, this is just unnecessary, and the other cards I put in are at higher power level. Next up is Brave the Elements. I like protection, but in a cube with as many colors and people playing 2 or 3 colors decks, this is really only great in mono white, and I don't think you can get there. Even if you cut white, you're going to end up with like a subpar underpowered deck if you go mono white, so it was an easy cut. And last white card out is Archetype of Courage. I've been looking to cut this. It's just not impressive. I mean, it's Theros block, and I think Theros block ends up being more along the power level of like a Kamigawa block and less playable overall. So as I do updates, I'm sure a lot more of the Theros block cards will continue to rotate out. I mean, out of that, only two out of the white have gone, but still out of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 cards, that's a huge percentage. So that is the white ins and outs, as I will transition over to blue. Now I will do, when this gets posted, I'll make sure I have a link to my updated cube if you guys want to look it over, and feel free to draft it on Cube Tutor. The more it gets drafted, the smarter the bots get, and the pick orders get sorted out and all of that. And then of course I'm arranging to do some paper drafts with it, because paper drafts are pretty cool. So next up is blue. So first off is I'll draw the Sky Spawner. This is, I think, maybe the best common in Battle for Zendikar, and it does everything blue wants to do. 2/1 flying for 3 mana, gives a little blue ramp, is pretty cool. It's like a flying ball sack, so I like it quite a bit. Next up is Forbidden Alchemy. I don't think I had cut this, but it was in the cut list, so I put it back in over another card, because I think it's just universally it's more useful than the card I actually cut. So still not all that impressed with it, because my cube doesn't have the strongest graveyard theme, like flashback theme, because to get there you have to have a lot of rares, and it doesn't support rares. Next up is Benthic Infiltrator. The Ingest doesn't really do very much, but I like the unblockable blue stuff. And there's plenty of like equipment and ways to abuse that effect. Plus it just fits in curve really well, and blue needs a lot of early game stuff because it doesn't get it very often. Next up is Incubator Drone, another Eldrazi Scion producer. 2/3 with a 1/1, so it's a 3/4 for 4 mana overall between the two bodies. It's devoid. If you notice, all of the blue spells, all the blue creatures so far have been devoid. And that's just because blue got a lot of devoid stuff. Devoid is kind of this flavor text in this particular cube, unless they push it into Oath and make it a much bigger deal. So next up is the Wing Rider Patrol. This is the 4/3 flying for 5, and when it attacks you scry well, deals damage you scry to. Very strong and limited. I played one in my draft I did because I went white, blue, awaken, and I got one of these guys. And then at the pre-release, every time I saw anybody play this, it's a value. I mean, it kills your opponent, it gets your library stacked. Definitely very draftable. Next up is a card I haven't got to play yet, Coastal Discovery. Very awesome. I like the design. I like the idea. So it's draw 2 cards for 3 and a blue, and then it's got Awaken 5 and a blue. So for 1 more mana than a Mulldrifter, you still get the 2 cards, and you get a 4/4 hasty land creature. I think that's great. So definitely something that blue wants to do going into the late game. Speaking of Awaken, Clutch of Currents is next. 1 to return a creature at sorcery speed, and then it's got Awaken of 3 for 4 and a blue. And then Rush of Ice, same Awaken, 4 and a blue for a 3/3, and then it taps and it will, the creature doesn't untap during the next untap step. So the 2 Awaken cards for blue. And then tied for first, in my opinion, Retreat to Coralhelm. The tap is awesome. The scry is awesome. This is kind of the quintessential blue card. It's good in blue-red. It would be good in blue-green. Maybe not in blue-black because blue-black has other options, but definitely pretty decent in most decks. If you can trigger the activated or the tap on your opponent's turn, it gets even better because you can tap in response to declaring attacks. Artificer's Epiphany is the first card out. This is the card I had in, and then I was like, well, which is better, Forbidden Alchemy or this? I think Alchemy overall is just better. There's still, even with Battle for Zendikar, there's not a huge amount of artifacts in the cube. Most of them are mana fixers, and I just don't imagine you're going to discard something that you need to fix your mana to draw and to gain an extra card when you can do Forbidden Alchemy and just get value from that. Next up is Ojutai's Breath. I don't think this ever got played, or got played like in one draft. Again, Dragons cards and Theros cards, they just feel woefully underpowered in Modern. Strong in Standard, but I mean the cube is too big just to take that into account. So next up is Psychic Strike. Never played. I added it in on a whim. I just don't think it's good enough in any stretch of the imagination. And again, the cards that I added I feel are a higher power level than it. So Siren of the Winged Coast, Fanged Coast. It's just going to be a 4/4 that dies. Nobody is ever going to let you steal a creature with it. Next up is Whip Spine Drake. I had added this in to bolster Morph. I don't think it's necessary. I don't like the off-color Morph. I do like the card frame, but that's about it. Jetting Glasskite. I don't feel like this is what Blue wants to do for its curved topper. I could be wrong, and this could go back in. Out of all of the cuts that I made, this is probably the one I'm a little like, well, it's still pretty good. It has the Glasskite effect on it, so it might go back in. Next up is Jeskai Wing Scout. The prowess, 2/1 flying, dies to everything, and I feel like almost every other prowess card is better because they're normally 2 casting cost, and this being 3 puts it in a weird spot in the curve where you really want to be attacking and pumping up a prowess creature with spells at 3 instead of playing a prowess creature at 3. And then next up is the Spell Eater. Literally, this will never get flipped in this cube. 5 mana for a mana leak. And sure, it leaves behind the 3/4, but I mean, we're talking about 8 mana total to do that, and it just doesn't seem like it's going to ever happen. I was never impressed with the Megamorph. I think there might be 2 Megamorph creatures now in the entire queue. So that's blue. The blue changes. So we'll move over to black. Okay, so black. Mute for just a second, or pause for a second. Okay, so black. Black, first off, Carrier Thrall. I like this guy. He's on curve, he's a 2-1 for 2, and then when he dies, you get a Scion. So he replaces himself. And I love any sort of these creatures, like Doom Traveler, the other things that are like Doom Traveler, like Loyal Cathar and that type of stuff, that replace themselves. So it's not as equal power level, but in a way a Scion could be more useful on the flip than this guy is in the long game. So, plus he's on curve, so he doesn't necessarily screw you out of anything. The black retreat I don't think is particularly strong, but it is a win con, and if you play it before play land before combat, it can make a creature better on the attack, basically. It's basically here for the second ability, because in limited that second ability is actually really good, that incidental life gain. So that's why he made it in. Next up is Sharpshooter. I like big mana sinks in my cubes, and I gotta play around with this a little bit and being able to pick off small creatures. For 5 mana for a recurring ability to give -1/-1 is pretty good. He'll go in there with there's another similar black creature that I added recently, or out of the last setup date. I can't remember the name of it though, so I'm going to look it up. Abascan Shaman? No, that's not it. Okay. Okay, this is Great Radio, I'm sorry. Or Sure Shot, there he is. So very similar to me in effect, where you're paying mana to give a -1/-1 creature to a creature. In the case of the Sure Shot, you have to have a creature card in hand to do it, but for the Sharpshooter, you just can spend the mana, and since you're looking at a forecasting cost creature, you're probably dropping this on 3, and then when you get to 5 if you need it. So it's actually kind of comparable overall. So next up is a card that you can completely disregard. I just like this kind of removal, plus it exiles. And anything that exiles has extra utility, even though I'm not really running any processors, because the common and uncommon processors are quite bad, except for the blue, the Demiri flying one, and I don't have enough processors to support it. If ingest or exile continues to be a large part of Oath, then I could see doing it, but I don't have a lot of delve in here. Next up is Transgress the Mind. I like these capped discard spells quite a bit. Devoid, target player reveals his or her hand. You choose a card with converted card mana cost 3 or greater and exile that card. So it's kind of the opposite of Inquisition. It costs like for 1 extra mana. So I'm running both, as well as like Duress. So I like that capped, like controlled black discard. So Grave Purge is in here, a little graveyard hate. This card does 3 things: exiles a creature, gives you a Scion, and you draw a card for 3 mana. So I can't, like, I think as a black, if you're drafting black and you just happen to end up with it, you might even run it main deck just to get the Scion and have a little ramp. So I like it quite a bit. And the last one is Rising Miasma. It's the only black awaken spell. So all creatures get -2/-2. It's sorcery for 3 and a black. And then it has awaken 3 for 5 and black. In a really long game, this could be a win condition. It's probably not going to be. It's probably just going to be another like nausea infest variant. But I like it. So, okay, first out, Hideous Laughter. Just kind of, the miasma went in, this went out. I don't like the wipe effect at instant speed. Definitely kind of a Kamigawa block throwback because it's got the splice on it. So it was a splice enabler, or it was enabled by arcane spells. It's just not necessary. Next up is Dead Drop. I can't imagine this ever getting cast, ever. I mean, it's 10 freaking mana. Even if you're delving a whole bunch of stuff away, it's still going to be expensive. Next up is Necromantic Summons. I have a couple other Reanimator spells in there that are forecasting cost, or that have flashback, so I don't think this is necessary. And then a lot of what's left. There's a couple of removal spells that I cut, because black is just full of removal, so moving creatures into the spot and stuff is better for consistency. Disembowel, just kind of a middle of the road removal spell. I do love the art so much, but it's okay. Valtung Invocation. This was a remnant from when I had dragons in the cube. I was running the uncommon cycle. They're all horrible, and that makes this card less good. There's other better sacrifice effects for 2 mana in it, so that's out. Butcher's Glee. It's a cute trick, but I don't think it would ever see any play. And Sidisi Muckdraggers. There's enough graveyard recursion at lower cost that I don't really think this needs to be in there. So, like, there's literally the Gravedigger effect attached to the Gravedigger in here. Why do we need to have a 9 casting cost Gravedigger? We don't. It's just not necessary. Okay. Green is next. And just like every time that better green stuff comes out, I go green, you're going to get a whole bunch of new stuff. So first off, Call the Scions. Ramp creatures, easy to cast, very splashable, supports the 5-color deck, supports mono green ramp. Lifestring Druid, I don't like that it costs 3, but the ability to add 1 mana of any color is pretty good. And it's a 2/1 for 3, which isn't horrible. Not great, not horrible. Next up is Brood Monitor. This card I like immensely. 3/3 with 3 1/1 Scion tokens for 6 mana, so it's 6/6, and then you get the utility of having the Scion tokens. Next up is another card I missed from Origins. It is Undercity Troll. Regenerate, 2/2 for 2, and then it's Renowned 1, so you could end up with a regenerating 3/3 for 2 with Regenerate. I think that's quite good. The Regenerate cost is 3, but that's what they're doing with the Regenerate now. They're trying to make it a little less appetizing. Next up is Unnatural Aggression. It's the Fight variant from Battle for Zendikar. 3 mana, instant to void, and if the creature your opponent controls, if it dies, it gets exiled instead. Next up is the Tarjuru Stalwart. Again, a little support for the 5-color deck. It's 3 mana. If you cast it at 3 different casting costs, it's a 3/4 for 3. No evasion or anything like that, but that's still pretty effective. So, Eyeless Watcher. It's the Kozilek's Predator. Less as good, or not as good. New variant. So instead of being a 3/3 for 4 with 2 tokens, it's a 1/1 with 2 tokens for 4. But it's devoid, and the tokens are 1/1, so not that far off. The Green Retreat, this is probably my 3rd favorite of the retreats. The token effect is pretty good, and then the gain 2 life can get you to the mid-game, and that's not bad. It's not as effective as the white or the blue, though. Next up is Sumberwald Alpha. I was watching some Origin draft videos and I saw how good this guy was. So I thought I would give it a try. A 3/2 for 4 isn't bad. When all your creatures get blocked, they get +1/+1 isn't bad. And then giving a creature trample isn't bad. So overall, it does quite a bit. And it helps green, and green needs help almost all of the time, I feel. One more sec. Okay. Next up is Swell of Growth. I think this card's pretty neat. When I was playing on the beta, it's kind of like Explorer meets Giant Growth. So I really like that. It doesn't let you draw the cards, so you don't quite get the value. But with some landfall stuff going on, I mean, I do have stuff like Plated Geopede in here already. So it kind of helps out with that. I mean, just, oh, look, I swing, I make a good blowout sort of situation. Oh, and I just happen to get to play my extra land from my hand. Or, hey, look, I block, I pay 2, all of a sudden my creature's no longer trading and I get to play an extra land, so it's just incidental. And then the last thing is Wild Instincts, which probably should have been in earlier. It's the fight variant from Origins. It's really strong, probably stronger than the Unnatural Aggression is. But basically anytime there's a playable fight card, because it's green interaction and green doesn't get this type of interaction or didn't until recently, I'm probably going to try to cram it in. They're just too good most of the time. So, okay, so outs for green. Awaken the Bear. This kind of a generic pump spell. It has trample attached, but it's a lot of green cards that are worth playing already have trample. Woolly Loxodon. This kind of a generic beater. Probably only playing it again to make Morph more attractive, but I don't think that's really worth it. Obviously, Morph is already done. Hellgeist. 6 mana for a 4/2 with Undying, so it's really only good on the flip. I don't think it's where green wants to be top end wise. Next up is Festerhide Board. Or I don't think Morbid's really a thing in this cube. I mean, stuff's gonna die, but like you don't really have the tools to take advantage of it, except for playing an occasional dork like this. And a 5/5 for 4 is okay, but I don't think you really wanted to sit there with this in your hand waiting to create the perfect opportunity. Next up is Salt Road Quartermasters. I put this in and I watched a bunch of Origins drafts and stuff, and I don't think I ever saw anybody ever play this. And that speaks volumes of how good it is in Limited overall. Next up is Alpine Grizzly. I don't need these kind of like this flat generic vanilla creatures, even though it's above curve in the cube. Green has so many good creatures that are pushed, and so even though this is over curve, it doesn't really need to be in here. Next up is Atarka Beastmaster. I like bears. There's better bears. Even with the 5 mana sink, if you have ferocious and formidable are basically the same thing in my brain. I just don't think you need a card like this. Masuto Tribe Elder. I don't think you need anti-flying stuff like this in the queue. Next up is Ashcoat Bear. It's just a bear with flash from Time Spiral block. Not really necessary. Travel Prep. While I do like the white-green color combination, this is pretty weak. And again, without any of the heroes, I'm not running any of the white heroes or the green heroes. It's just not necessary. And then Incremental Growth. Pretty decent card, but I don't think you need to play it. Overruns in, and it's just better. If you're going to try to push that type of deck, you want that type of effect more. I just feel like that makes the creature that gets the 3/1/1 counters into a huge removal target. Okay, so that's it for green. We have red, and then we'll go through gold, and then we'll go through artifacts and then lands, and we'll be done. So not much longer. First up, Nettle Drone. This guy, I had a 3-1 for 4 in with like a minor upside, so I just cut that for a 3-1 for 3 with a minor upside. There is enough artifacts and stuff that he might get multiple untaps. And surprisingly good in either mode. Pinging at the end of turn to get some extra damage in, or swinging on an empty board. This guy's kind of the total package. How do you pronounce that? Akoum Stonewalker. This is the guy that makes those elemental tokens off of landfall for 3. Just to be able to poop out that type of token, that elemental with haste and trample for cheap is really good. Booger Brute was a card I missed from Origins. I really like Menace quite a bit. I hope they keep pushing Menace out, maybe a little more than they did Intimidate, even though I think we only saw like 2 Menace cards in battle. Theme-wise, I just don't think it fits battle very well. So next up is Rolling Thunder, Pauper Cube favorite. Finally in Modern, thankfully an uncommon, so it won't ruin standard Pauper, standard Pauper. So definitely auto include into this cube. Probably like the people can say Fireball is the best red spell of all, X spell of all time. I think Rolling Thunder is because there's no additional cost to split targets up. So I just like it quite a bit. Touch of the Void. The Void Exile 3 damage spell for 3 mana. Super good. Vestige of Emrakul. 3/4 for 4 with the Void and Trample. Pretty good. Okay, so that's it for the ins on red. Now the outs. Alright, Fearsome Temper. Again, I've cut all except for 1 heroic creature. It's still in red. This card does not need to be. The same with Coordinated Assault. It's a decent trick, but no heroic to pump it. Glare Welder, 5 casting cost, 3/1. That's what I cut for the Nettle Drone. The Evoke on it's pretty interesting. Red gets a lot of can't block effects now, so that's not really necessary. Archetype of Aggression, I kept both of the remaining archetypes that I had. I don't care about this card at all. Giving Trample to a bunch of 1/1 seems stupid, and it really only hoses like 6 green cards or something like that. World Wake Phoenix, even in the 5-color deck, this would never get drafted. It's just not that good. The only reason it's even in here is because when Modern Master 2 came out, they dropped it down to uncommon, and I got it caught. It was like 6 cents or something like that, so I thought I would splash it in. And then Satyr Hoplite is out. No more heroic. Only a Crowing Crusader because he does have additional utility, and red does still have some tricks in that target it. So it's the strongest of all the heroic creatures across the board at common and uncommon. So that's why it survives to this day. Maybe not for much longer. Okay, so one more moment. I spend all day at my job talking, so by the time I get home, I don't want to talk to anybody about anything, so my throat is always dry and sore. Plus, there's a cold going around the office, of course. So, so Orzhov in Dranu's Emissary, 2/2 flying, with the, I don't even know what effect to call it. Opponent loses 1 life, you gain 1 life, so the 2-point swing. I like that quite a bit. It's just a pretty decent finisher. Out, Cartel Aristocrat. I really like this card, even with my deck's ability to support tokens quite a bit, you're probably sacrificing your real creature a lot of the time to save your 2/2. That feels dumb. This feels like something you really don't want to do. Next up is Gruul. If not Gruul, then die. Grove Rumbler. I like this guy. Trample. 3/3 for 4 with Landfall, making him into a 5/5 trample. And I mean, you're probably going to have a 5/5 trample attacking on turn 5 quite a bit of time. And I think that makes him actually really strong. Outs, armed and dangerous. I like the armed. The dangerous portion is pretty much unplayable. And so it doesn't really need to be in. Gruul wants big, hard to deal with creatures more than this type of effect. Both green and red have better effects at instant speed that are tricks. So next up is Simic in Skyrider Elf. I like this guy. I ran into him at the pre-release, and he came down as a 4/4. He reminds me a lot of Sky Shroud Manta from 5th Dawn. So even if you just cast him for blue and green, he's a 2/2 flying for 2 mana, which isn't horrible. But if you have 3 colors, he's a 3/3. If you have 4 colors, he's a 4/4 for 4 mana, and I mean that's right on curve, and curve is important. Out, Elusive Crisis starts out as a 0/4, and you have to work a hard time to get him to anything impressive for 3 mana. This doesn't seem all that great. Simic needs help still, so because it's just overall, there's just certain color combinations that I don't think Wizards will ever figure out, like the theme of, and they don't really have to, because the only time it's really important is when we go to places like Ravnica. When you look over my stuff, like Shamble Shark isn't great. Simic Charms are not all that great, but I guess I finally got to the point where I like my Simic cards pretty well. Like Coin Oracle is one of my favorite Magic cards of all time because it's so much value. Bounding Crisis is pretty decent. Shamble Shark is probably the weak one out. Kiora's Follower is kind of a nice personification of a bear and on untap. I like the Infiltrator because it's unblockable. I wish it was a 3/2, making it a little more green, but what can you do? Ice Feather Aven is awesome. Trigon Predator is awesome. The Assault template is pretty good. The Rising Chimera with Flash is pretty neat, and the Simic Charm isn't horrible. It's just not my favorite of the charm set from Return to Ravnica block. Gate Crash or whatever. One sec. You may notice that these gold cards are kind of all over the place, and that's just because they were randomly crammed into my cube. So we're going to move over to Esper and then go back to guilds. So Tower Gargoyle is in. It's a 4/4 flying for 4 mana, 1 colorless and white, blue, black. So it makes it a little tricky to cast. But it's in over the very subpar Arsenal Thresher. 2/2 for 2, and then a white, black, and blue. When it comes into play, reveal any number of other artifact cards from your hand, and it gets a 1/1 counter for each card revealed this way. You're revealing 0 99% of the time, and so you're paying 4 mana for a 2/2. I'd rather be paying 4 mana and knowing that I'm going to get a 4/4 flying than paying 4 mana for a 2/2. So, okay, next up is Golgari. Total brain fart. Alright, so Golgari, Kadorza Guildmage. I like Kadorza Guildmage quite a bit from Return to Ravnica block. Target creature gets +1/+1 and gains Intimidate for Golgari and a colorless. And then 2 colorless into Golgari. Sacrifice a non-token creature, put X/1/1 green sapperling tokens were equal to the toughness. So I mean that's a good way to get extra value out of a creature that's dying. So I like that. It's not as strong as the Golgari Guild Mage, but that's in here too. That's really strong. Next up is Catacomb Sifter, another card from Battle. It's a 2/3 for 3, so 1 Golgari. Has Devoid, gives you a Scion token, and then whenever a creature you control dies, you scry 1. So I actually like this guy quite a bit, especially in a color combination that's known for like sacrificing stuff. Out Death Frenzy, not necessary, and Golgari. I mean, 5 mana, it just doesn't do what you want a 5 mana card to do. And Gaze of the Gorgon, I don't think this is really all that great either. I really liked it back in original Ravnica block, but for a forecasting cost spell, you really want more than some regeneration. So, okay. And it was better when damage stacked. Damage doesn't stack anymore, so it's not as good. Okay. Moving along to Azorius. Azorius constantly needs help. Again, there's this certain color combinations that you think Wizards would get down by now. Like, look how good overall colors like Gruul are, or for the most part, Orzhov are. They're really good. Like, you don't really have any problem with that. But it's like, they don't want here, like Breadbait Elf and Gorkan Rampager and Burning Tree Emissary and the Ram Gang, like super strong cards. But then I think Wizards goes, hey, white's pretty powerful and blue, we can't have blue be good. So when white and blue get together, they often kind of just screw them, basically. So I'm constantly tweaking. If you notice, it's becoming very quickly tapper, flying. So to add to that, the first card is Plumevel, Flash Wall, defending, flying, 4/4 for 3 mana, white or blue in any combination, so pretty decent. Next up is a Trick, Royal Spout, another Awakened spell. I like this type of tempo put on top of play, so definitely a good blowout when dealing with somebody playing a few large high casting cost spells. And then the last one is Ethercast Knight. White has a minor Exalted theme that I might try to go in and bolster. Exalted is always good, in my opinion. Like, I've never not been impressed by that effect. Plus, he's a 1/3 for a blue and a white, and that's early game defense. And in my deck, having a few cards with a decent sized butt actually helps out getting to the middle game quite a bit in my cube. So outs are Curse of Chains, just not necessary. White has enough of this effect on its own. Blue has enough tempo and counters and stuff that you don't really need that effect. Turn to Mist, again, white has enough flicker effects and blue has enough good flicker effects that a one-shot effect like this isn't necessary. I mean, I'm not cutting Mist Meadow Witch, that's staying in, and it's basically the same effect but reusable. So, and then Deputy of Acquittals, I've been waiting to cut this. Not really necessary in any way, not impressive, not fun to play. So that's it for Gold. If you notice, Gold had a few cards from Battle, but really it was other older stuff from Alara block and stuff that I wanted to go ahead and get in there. So, okay, so over to colorless artifacts, that type of junk. I can't say colorless anymore because Devoid is colorless and it screws everything up. Okay, so here we go. Deathless Behemoth. With all the Scion producers, he's pretty good. This is a 6/6 Vigilance creature for 6. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that at all. And then you can sacrifice 2 Scions and return it to your hand. You can only do that as a sorcery. But, I mean, it dies in combat, and then you just get it back on your next phase, and then cast it on your next turn or whatever. Hard to deal with creatures, are always good. Next up, Breaker of Armies. A 10/8 for 8, and then all creatures able to block it must do so. This thing, you get very few attacks with this guy swinging at you until you have an empty board. I mean, even if it's just, oh, I pay mana and I swing and you lose 6 of your creatures or whatever and it dies, that is still impressive. That's like a 4 for 1 or a 5 for 1 or whatever. So definitely worth the inclusion. Bane of Galagad. 7/5. The 5 has been brought up to me as being not that impressive, but every other aspect of this card is impressive. 7 mana for the 7 power, and when it attacks, it has Super Annihilator and exiles 2 permanents. Super awesome. I like this card an amazing amount. Next up is Hedron Archive. It is the Super Mind Stone. So it is 2 and then 2 tap to draw 2 cards, and it's 4 mana to cast. And then Kozilek's Channeler, 4/4 for 5, and then you can tap to add 2 mana to your mana pool. I do notice that somehow I missed ordering the new Crusher. So know now, because I won't do another update video for just 1 card, but I will be adding, I'll be getting a copy of that. I don't have one right now. I'll be getting a copy of that and adding that in. And then there's a black enchantment that I still have yet to get a copy of. I was hoping to get one because I had forgot to order it in my drafts. I can't remember quite the name of it. It's from Battle. You guys are probably watching this and yelling it at me. Black enchantment from Battle. It is Vampiric Rites. I'll be putting that in as well with my token heavy theme, and it just feels like a very black card thing to want to do. So that'll be going in as well. But when that happens, I'll tweet out that I did the update and added those cards. Out are a lot of miscellaneous mana fixers. Mana Silex, Vessel of Endless Rest, Manolith, Etched Oracle, and Springleaf Drum. Just miscellaneous color fixing. I wanted to make the 5-color good stuff deck a little less good by taking out some of these cheap mana fixing artifacts. It does weaken it, but doesn't kill it because my land count is still really out there to get 4 colors comfortable, 5 colors stretching sort of thing. And then this was a hard cut, but I really did want the bigger, more impressive artifact creatures in that came with Battle for Zendikar. So that's why it's cut. So, last set of stuff, and these are kind of both cycles. So in are the 5 utility lands, even though I don't particularly think I love the blue one. The blue one's really good because it's a nice tempo play. I like the black one quite a bit because it's like a raised dead sort of effect for a land. And I like the green one for fixing because it puts the cards on bottom that you don't get. So I like those two. These are pretty adequate but not great combat tricks. But again, since they're attached to lands and they take up a land slot, I'd be silly not to include them. I did look up the other set of utility lands from the original Zendikar, and they were definitely creations of the design at that time. They just don't do quite enough to get included. Maybe later, but then again, I would be cutting more fixing lands out, and I'm kind of at the point where I think I've cut enough fixing lands to not be so far over the top with them. Who knows? I do plan on breaking the rules a little bit at the point where the Scrylands bottom out, and they're bottoming them out basically right now because they're not modern playable. I'll probably pick up a set of those and replace like the guild gates with them, so the guild gates will fly out and those will go in. They always felt like uncommons to me anyway, and I knew that they got printed as rares for just to make sure that standards stayed moderately sane. But even then, they were never in really short supply, so standard got crazy and everybody was scrying constantly. So next up, next cycle is the Blighted cycle. I love all of these except for the white one, but I didn't want to put in just 4. And even the white one, again, white is super token heavy. A lot of the white cards produce tokens. Just the creatures alone. White paired with green can produce a lot of creatures. Of course, the black one with the sacrifice effect. Oh, that's the blue one. The card draw on the blue one's amazing. The life gains. The land fetching on the green one is actually really reasonably costed. So definitely something a green deck would want to do, a green-blue deck would want to do, a 3-color deck would want to do, so definitely pretty strong. The red one, I'm not as big on it as like LSB, but it's still pretty good because it's colorless, uncounterable damage. And then of course the black one's awesome. The sacrifice effect on it is just really good. And last card that gets added, Spawning Bed. I'm going to continue to add this type of effect as lands until they decide to stop printing them. The last one I added was I believe it was the Doctor Foundry from Origins. Let's find it. See all these lands? See what I mean? I'm running so many of the like subpar dual lands basically in here just to make sure that people can go 2 to 5 colors if they want. But the problem with it is like it leads people to drafting these crazy like 5-color I drafted all of the good stuff and you lose decks, and I just don't think that's very fun to play against. It's fun to play, oh don't get me wrong, it's fun to play, but it's not fun to play against. Did I not add that? Well, that'll be fixed. I'll pick one of those up and then I'll cut the mage ring network. That'll just straight go out. I thought I added one. Well, that'll be easy enough to fix. Okay. And then the last set, first off, again it's cycles. This got cut, Shimmering Grotto got cut for the Spawning Bed. Easy peasy. And then I cut the Cold Snap tap duels, all 5 of those. And then I cut the Invasion era tap duels as well. And that's it. That's the ins, that's the outs for the cube. I am planning to do a draft of the cube coming up at the new comic book shop in town, Boom Comics, so hopefully I'll be able to arrange that. I'm trying to get at least 6 people to commit And of course I'll talk about that on the show when that goes down. So, but that's it. This will probably go up next week, and hopefully by that point I'll have everything set up so I can actually draft it. And I want to thank everybody for watching. You have a good evening.
Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe, it really helps us out. You can find us on Twitter at MagicGathStrat, Facebook /MagicGatheringStrat, or on the web, MagicGatheringStrat.com. There you can find articles and free prize-supported leagues. This is all brought to you by our Patreons and CardHoarder.com. If you enjoyed this content, please consider supporting us at Patreon.com /MagicGatheringStrat.